And during 2016 election, people were saying how Trump was going after the media. And yeah, Trump came up with the term fake news. Actually, he didn't invent the term. He just, when you got the loudest bully pulpit in the country, well, I guess when you say things like those commercials, E.F. Hutton, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
It's a good stock, you don't say. Yeah, my broker says it's a real good buy. What does your broker say? Well, my broker's E.F. Hutton. And Hutton says, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. What should I buy? What should I sell? So back to the story, guys. So we all know. So Donald Trump, fake news, fake news, fake news. Wrong, wrong. I'm here. I want to be the president. I wish I didn't become president because now I have to work for a living. Working for a living's hard. I'd rather not. I'd rather golf. I'd rather spend time with my wife and not work. Working's for losers. And I guess I'm a loser. I'm the world's biggest loser. But I beat Hillary. So there is an upside. So, is the news real or is it fake? Did Donald Trump have his finger on the pulse of anything? Or was he just doing what he usually does? Talk. Talk to himself, talk, but also talk to help himself in his campaign and to sell his brand. Well, a little bit of both, guys. You see, you can be right for the wrong reasons and you can be wrong for the right reasons. Donald Trump was both at the same time. Let me explain. There's a lot of misconceptions going on in our media right now. Well, actually going on in the minds of people who actually read or consume media. When I talk about media, I'm talking about corporate media. I'm talking about the newspapers of note, like the New York Times, the various Washington Post, LA Times, big newspapers that have been around for some hundreds of years. Then we also have websites that people know all about very well, such as the CNN and the MSNBC and the Fox News and Politico and Slate. The list goes on, Huffington Post. One of the things that I've been noticing over the course of this election cycle is just how much there are fake news. And it's not always just a blatant lie. In fact, rarely is it a blatant lie. What it is omission. You know when you leave things out that you should have kept in, that sort of tell a story, that make things totally different once you include that information. Just to prove my point, check out this from a couple of folks on the Bernie Sanders campaign. David Sirota put this out. He said, for weeks, Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg have been parroting GOP talking points against Medicare for All, while raking in donations from health industry donors. Now President Barack Obama's Medicare chief debunks the talking points. So what David is alluding to there is something that you should have heard about in your regular news consumption. If we had real journalists on the job or journalists that were willing to tell the truth, we know that, well, it's kind of strange that now that Pete's talking this new language about Medicare for All, he's also taking in more money from the insurance companies. He's got an uptick in donations that coincide with the industries that he's talking favorably of. That would be a little bit of journalistic work you would think that journalists would do. But they're not doing it. Now, they're not actually lying. They're just not reporting it. Hence, omission, a lie by omission. But it doesn't stop there. We have more pointed examples of lies by omission. Here goes one of my favorite. This is a tweet by Brianna on the Bernie Sanders campaign. She says, look at this, look at the masthead of this article. Poll. Trump holds slim lead over Warren and Biden in Iowa. Matchups. Now, if all you saw was this article, you don't know if anything else exists. That's all you're thinking about is the way it's written. Trump is holding a slim lead over Warren and Biden in Iowa. Oh man, Warren and Biden better pick it up. You know what they leave out? They leave out that Bernie Sanders beats Trump in Iowa. Sneaky, aren't they, Johnson? Kind of important point to make, isn't it? Yeah, you wrote an article about Warren and Biden losing to Trump in Iowa, and you kind of left out that Bernie's beating Trump in Iowa. But the person reading the article would have no way of knowing that because, well, they're not a statistician, nor do they run a polling firm, nor are they privy to all the information, nor do they have the time to be off 3 hours sleep like your man Tim Black, trying to weed through all this crap. They got jobs, Johnson. So what I'm trying to tell you folks is they are lying to us daily. Not just in, hey, what time is it? 8 o'clock. Are you sure? Yes. Oh man, it's midnight. Why did you lie? Not those type of lies. Those lies are easy to find out. It's more like the lies where they just leave out the truth. If it makes sense. Well, it's going to make sense. It needs to make sense if you're going to make sense of any of this political season that we're facing right now. Which brings me to a point, the next round. I want you to ride with me on this because this is what's going on. This was the talk of Twitter today. Poll, Biden and Warren both beat Trump and Pence in Florida. Okay. Biden and Warren beat Trump and Pence in Florida. That's great. Guess we better hurry up and get those guys in there because we definitely want to defeat Trump in Florida. I mean, if your goal is to reclaim the presidency, you might want to win Florida, right? Yeah, it makes sense. This poll conducted by the University of Northern Florida Public Opinion Research Lab is where the Hill got their information from. Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Elizabeth Warren, two of the leading candidates in the presidential primary for the Democratic Party, both carry the states of Florida against Trump. Or Vice President Pence in the general election, according to a new poll. According to University of Florida, of Northern Florida, Biden beats Trump by 5 points, with 48% of Florida respondents saying they would choose Biden, 43% saying they would choose Trump. Warren beats with a 3-point margin over Trump. 46% say they would pick Warren, and 43% say they will pick Trump. How many people notice something about this poll? I think some of you do because some of you are fans of Bernie Sanders. Well, he's not included in the poll. No, because, see, when they said they looked at some of the leaders, they didn't count Bernie as a leader in the Democratic primary race. Get what I'm saying about the lies of omission? Now, I know you wonder, you're like, how could they not consider Bernie a leader when he's winning in some polls and he's second in other polls, and maybe one other poll he might be third according to that poll, that sample size of the 500 people they talked to or whatever crazy number, but he's the one who ran in 2016 and won 22 states. He's the one with over 1 million donors. He's the one who set records with the number of donors. How could he not be considered a leader even when he statistically, nationally is a leader? Well, Johnson, it's all up to the people doing the poll. That's why. They decided they want to mix it up a bit. Here they go making an explanation of why they did it this way. As I stated, the University of Northern Florida Public Opinion Research Laboratory did the actual polling. All Hill did was run it. So they're saying, hey, we didn't say that Bernie's not a leader. We just didn't choose to cover him. That's all right. We don't have to choose to cover all of the leaders, just some of the leaders. But the thing that was most troubling about this article, guys, is though they say they didn't choose to cover Bernie Sanders and they only wanted to cover some of the leaders in the Democratic primary, they did choose to cover Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, both polling significantly lower than Bernie Sanders. So let's cut to the chase a little bit, guys. So they covered 4 people out of 20 people. They went Biden, Elizabeth, if that's the order in which you want to go. Biden, Elizabeth, jump over Bernie, Pete, Harris. Get it? Or you can say Elizabeth Biden over Bernie, Pete, Harris. I'm even wondering if that's the Harris part is right. So, like, this made people majorly upset, right? Because they're looking at this poll, they're going, what the hell is going on? Why did you skip over Bernie? This makes no sense. Who conducted this poll and what's the rationale for skipping Bernie? I mean, some would argue you could go Bernie, Elizabeth, Biden. But that's neither here nor there because they didn't cover him at all. So, here goes the author of the poll, Mike Bender. Here's his explanation for why he didn't include Bernie Sanders. He said, we opted for the top 2. We then wanted to see how candidates with different trajectories and diversity would fare versus real Donald Trump in a general election. Hence, including Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris, if it were a primary poll, obviously, we would have had all 19 candidates. So let me get this right, guys. Mike Bender says, hey, we wanted people with different trajectories and diversity. How can you make a claim that Pete Buttigieg is diversity in any way? Unless you're talking about his sexual orientation. I guess that's what you mean, right? Is that what you mean? You're not talking about his actual coalition because he's got the whitest group of voters of any demographic in this race. Probably next to Amy Klobuchar. Or at least in the top 6. So his voting bloc is not diverse at all. And for that matter, neither is Elizabeth Warren's really. I mean, not on a national scale. So I was looking at an article from FP Politics. And it dissects this pretty well. It says, in response to the criticism that they say, as with all polls, it's a balance between number of questions and length of survey. I made a call to include the top 2 candidates and then 2 others that may provide some interest to the public and are in potentially different positions. Buttigieg is rising and Harris has stalled. I think the value of the data is that they are all pretty darn close in the head-to-head. We only polled Biden and Warren versus Pence, again leaning on the top 2 as the cut point. If you're concerned that Sanders is left out by that rationale, any poll that leaves out Bennett, Booker, or Steyer in a series of head-to-heads is just as problematic. Obviously, this wasn't a Democratic primary poll. We'd be conducting one of those in South Carolina in a couple of weeks, and we will include all active Dem candidates. So his idea or his explanation for why he didn't include Bernie is based on he wanted interesting candidates. And to him, Bernie's not interesting. Nah, it's not interesting that Bernie Sanders just came off of having a heart attack. No, it's not interesting that Bernie just got a major endorsement from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. No, it's not interesting that he just held the biggest, largest rally of the election season. No, it's not interesting that he just scored. He has the biggest war chest, the most amount of money stashed away, and has the most donors, who contribute with small dollar donations. All of these great, monumental, very interesting facts for us. But to these guys, not interesting at all. It's more interesting that we got a cop who's been on a downward spiral for the last 2 months ever since running into a buzzsaw called Tulsi Gabbard. And it's more interesting that we have Pete Buttigieg, who has went from being, hey, I'm a progressive too, to being, hey, I got a lot of GOP talking points I like to use. I found a new lane, Johnson. And that's my whole point about how insidious, how underhanded the media can be. And the average person has no time to look this stuff up. The average person has no time to chase it down, run it through the loop to find out what's going on. In fact, our old buddy Nate Silvers, according to this, Nate Silver, because I don't read Nate Silver, but according to this, it says Nate Silver points out Buttigieg's rise in Iowa isn't really a rise. He's been polling around 13% in Iowa for some time, and his national numbers are mostly flat. Which brings us to another conclusion, or another thing we want to examine. When they keep telling us how well a candidate is doing, like Pete Buttigieg, for instance, I say his name different ways, don't I? They keep telling us how great Pete's doing in Iowa, but he's not doing so great everywhere else. It seems like he's only doing okay in Iowa. I mean, he's flat everywhere else, according to Nate Silver. I mean, I know Nate got the election wrong and tends to bash Bernie for no reason just to get followers on Twitter, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong about Pete. He goes on to say, Harris has stalled. Her numbers have plummeted since the second Democratic debate, which I pointed out. Sanders is a great example of a candidate whose polls have pretty much stayed the same. So the whole point, guys, is that you can't trust the media to tell you the truth anymore, especially when it comes to polls. You have to know what the polling data consists of, who did the poll, what they're leaving out. And if you're just a person who's busy and all you had time really to do is read the titles, you will be misled totally. And the thing about being misled is it's not just that people have different opinions or the editorial direction of the newspaper. It's that people are influenced by the media that they consume. And if you are a regular person who's not on guard, who's not wearing your aluminum hat, your, telepathy-resistant goggles, and some type of barrier to keep the lies from penetrating your skull, you may begin to believe some of the stuff that you're reading. You may come away thinking, hey, the only way to beat Trump is to go with Elizabeth Warren. And you'd be mistaken because she's not beating Trump. Or you may think, let me give more money to Biden. Maybe that'll help him do better in Florida. When in actuality, there's somebody already beating him in Florida. His name is Bernie Sanders. And see, that's the whole point, guys. They're misleading us, and it's not because they don't know the data. It's not because the information is not available. Remember, it's these guys' jobs. This is what they do all day. You do whatever you do all day for a living. This is all they do. And for some reason, they can't seem to do it right. So at some point, you got to say, hey, everything can't be a mistake. Yeah. At some point, you say, hey, you got four kids with 3 different babies' mamas, or you got 4 kids and 4 different babies' daddies. You can't keep saying it was a mistake. At some point, you got to admit you lay down and you had a little loving. We can't keep saying we don't know how these things work. And the same thing goes for our media. They can't keep pretending that this is just, negligence or incompetence. How about just plain old sneaky, underhanded snake oil selling? There's a young lady here on Twitter who says this. Her name is Ellie the leftist. She says, I work for the lab that ran this poll. When I asked our director why Bernie wasn't included, saying that he's the top 3 candidate, I was told, not for long. This man thinks it's more likely for a Republican Senate to remove Trump than Bernie to stay strong in the polls. Booyah. Shout out to Ellie the leftist for blowing a whistle on this garbage Look, guys. So look, when I started this show tonight, I told you it was important for you to pay attention because some of us are, emotionally connected to this race at this point. And I understand it. I'm connected to it as well. I'm watching it closely. But you have to take with a grain of salt. Anything. I do mean anything you read from corporate media. And hey, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Sometimes you got to take with a grain of salt what you get from independent media too. I think it's only fair for people to say, you know what, I support this candidate and I'm biased towards him. I think it's only fair to do it, Johnson, because it's not right to gaslight people. There's been a lot of people who have been saying a lot of inflammatory things and reporting half-truths, not keeping it 100, however you want to describe it, and that is causing other people who read and consume this stuff to lose their minds, to stay up at night twiddling their thumbs, playing fidgety sticks, or to drink heavily, or to smoke some cannabis. The smoking cannabis part is probably okay. But you get what I'm saying? So what I'm saying, guys, is we can't let this stuff take a toll on us. We are being gaslighted on a daily basis. They're doing it intentionally. You heard the young lady say she works at the place where they did the poll of everything I just covered. And the guy's, his explanation for not including Bernie is he just doesn't believe in Bernie. I could present fact after fact after fact that are irrefutable. It's based on numbers, not his feelings. And still, since he has the editorial control over what the polling would be, he just omitted Bernie out of the blue like, we don't have to put him in. Now, I don't know if we want to blame the Hill for it. Did the Hill do the due diligence? I don't know. I think the quality of a poll resides with the people conducting the poll. But it is kind of obvious. You got to ask the question like, hey, where's Bernie? He's not some obscure candidate that you don't know is running. I mean, hell, you could make the case like, where's Yang? Where's Tulsi Gabbard? Where's Steyer? I mean, but come on, man. Not the Steyer part. No one's asking where's Steyer. I mean, we start looking at bases of followers. And that's another thing. This guy tried to say that part of it, Binder, his name is Binder, right? He tried to say part of it was he wanted the intrigue of having, including Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg. Well, if you're really looking for intrigue, and if that was the case, and if it wasn't to slap Bernie in the face, you'd have to include Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang. I mean, they got bigger online followings than Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg. It's like a no-brainer. So it's not even, hey, we're chasing news cycle, guys. Because a lot of times we discount this stuff. We say, hey, these people are just chasing the news cycle. They're just looking to make money. Not always the case. In this particular North Florida University poll, it's not about making money. Guy just doesn't like Bernie. That's it. That's all. It's even worse than making money.